Back in about 2010, I took my first steps into Warhammer 40k, buying the first starter box for at that time a seldom encountered army, the Tau Empire. I launched hardcore into the little blue guys, building a collection of battlesuits and railguns to take on any opponent. I've always loved hobbying and playing this game, but the lore has always been a key point to drive the gameplay and the hobby. The lore for the Tau specifically has always been fascinating to me, a race of highly advanced yet super naive aliens that truly want to do good in a very evil galaxy. Over the years, I've inhaled all the lore I can get from the codexes or novels. However, my love is not, well, shared by the team at PlayOn. So when a guy named George asked if he could come down to the studio, share his Tau army, and talk lore with me, well, that was a welcome sound indeed. Welcome to the studio, George, and welcome, viewer, to a long overdue video. Faction Focus, Tau. We're gonna learn all about the Tau, one of my favorite subjects, and welcome here, George. Welcome here.
Thank you. Handshakes. I like it. Welcome. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
This is what the Tau are all about. The gentlemanly handshakes, the honor, the nobility. Oh, it's so cool to talk Tau lore. I've been wanting to do this for so long. That is another guy. You know, most of the PlayOn team starts rolling their eyes whenever I talk Tau lore and they don't want to talk with me. I finally have someone to talk with. This is so cool. So George, you traveled a long ways here.
PlayOn is becoming a bit of a pilgrimage for certain hobbyists.
That's pretty cool.
I'm happy. I loaded my army on my back, saddled up my donkey, and we hit the cobble road. This is the first time ever that this entire force has been on one table together.
And how's it feel?
I have not even done that at home.
How's it feel to put your entire painted force out?
It feels amazing.
One of the reasons he's here, in addition to doing this Faction Focus, is we're gonna get to play a game. We've never done this before, Tau versus Tau. So if you're unfamiliar with the Tau are a fairly new race to Games Workshop from Games Workshop standard.
The very early release was small. It was the Hammerhead, which could be a devilfish. It was a few fire warriors. So this is a original crisis suit,
which you've already highly
that
modified.
I spent hours on modifying because I didn't want it to look
because they were
like
so
a crisis suit.
They were so unposable. Yes. All their arms were locked like this, so you could either go like this or like this, and all their legs were the single pose. You couldn't pose them.
We have the new iteration,
and the new iteration.
They are so beautiful.
Wow.
The detail is deeper. It's far more approachable for a newer painter. Especially with the contrast paints. It is a newer army in the grand scheme, just like you said, but Tau have roots that are deep now into our 40K, both from a lore and a modeling perspective.
And I only started at the tail end of 5th edition, so you've got the history on me.
Stereotypes we hear thrown around a lot of is these are the fish guys. When we are ungulates. We are prairie-going ungulates.
I'm convinced people just do it to bug me now.
Yeah.
I think I actually started something on the internet by saying they're not fish people, because I see that argument a lot now, and it's kind of funny.
But we have all of this aquatic-themed naming convention, which...
But you know what?
It's not us, it's Imperial.
It's not us.
It's not us. We didn't do it.
We didn't call it.
No.
This is not a devilfish in Tau language. It is like a number designation.
K something or other.
Yeah. Like the only reason it's called a devilfish is because it's from the perspective of
some Cadian scout saw it on a hilltop and was like, that looks like a devilfish.
We gotta classify this. Let's use an old Earth name. It's a devilfish.
Yeah, that's not our fault.
Like it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. They have hooves. Do you see any gills? Do you see any flippers? There's none of that stuff.
They don't even have scales. Like it's
ridiculous.
Let's at least clear that up. If nothing else today, we're not fish people.
And half the rest of the army doesn't even have aquatic names. Get out of here with those fish memes and go home. All right, let's pause right here. This joke is getting really tired, guys. It feels like just about every game I get chided with comments from the other guys about frozen fish or sushi jokes. What is with all the fish? We're still going with the fish.
We are still going with the fish.
What is going on over here?
I do smell a rematch, as well as I smell fried fish.
But it does bring up an interesting question. What would Tau eat? Wanting to stay away from the sushi jokes, the only other stereotype food from an Asian-inspired army is, well, noodles. Conveniently, around the same time we were planning this video, a new sponsor contacted us. Vite Ramen. We got this package in the mail, and fortunately for me, I had forgotten to bring a lunch. You know, typically when a sponsor reaches out, they have some talking points, here's some suggested words to say, that kind of thing. However, the document we got from Vite Ramen was different. For instance, they had 0 talking points, nothing specific to say, and it led with a gif of their CEO wearing a cat costume. Their website says they pay a living wage, they make their food all themselves, and their goal is to make healthier ramen, which kind of feels like it fits right in with the Tao, the very epitome of the greater good. Well, I guess what I'm saying is fine, it's canon. Tao eat noodles, and they're delicious. Click the link below in the description to get a bundle that gives you free gifts and free shipping in the continental USA, and don't forget to use the code EATGOODPLAYON at checkout for an additional 10% off. That's viteramen.com/eatgoodplayon, or just click the link below and use the code EATGOODPLAYON. Before we go into further about how the army works, let's talk the actual lore. So who are the Tao? The Tao are aliens in the 41st millennium. They are in the galactic east quadrant. They have this kind of tiny section of the map that is highly concentrated with planets, and they, for some reason, have evaded notice from the Imperium as a whole.
Largely debated is because they've for many years basically ignored the warp.
The Tao almost destroyed themselves at the very beginning and onset. They had one planet where they were having a massive planetary-wide war.
It was tumultuous.
Yeah.
It was chaos. It was anarchy.
And at that time, they were about to really destroy themselves.
And then we see the ethereals appear.
Who are the ethereals, you may ask? Nobody knows! The lore actually says there's some twinkling in the sky, some strange lights, and they appear. These ethereals, these fifth caste, they say we must work together. The Tao start coming to the table, negotiating, talking to each other, and realizing they have common cause, and the ethereals lead them in this greater good. The concept of the greater good is born.
This is the first iteration of the caste system being truly organized.
Basically, the Tao society is divided very stringently between these 5 castes of people that named after the different elements. So you've got the water caste, the fire caste, the earth caste, the air caste, and the ethereal caste, the leadership caste. And each one has their roles and does the various things. For instance, the fire caste is...
you didn't accept diplomacy, so now you die.
Yeah, pretty much.
They're the guns coming to bear when negotiations break down.
Pretty much everything you see here is fire caste. Fire caste are the warriors. They're the people that don the battle suits, pick up the pulse rifle, and shoot you across the field because you can't get to them in time.
Or they've jumped in on your face
Exactly,
and upset your tea party.
You've got the water caste, which are the diplomats, and they're also the political leaders. They're also the merchants. They form that kind of role in society. Then you've got the earth caste, and the earth caste are hold jobs like construction or scientists.
They're your engineers.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the earth caste.
Oh, they're so cool. I'm just imagining earth caste like tinkering away, developing how they can better this one tag. We also have the air caste. The air caste, they now live exclusively in the void, and so their bodies have elongated, and they're the pilots. So they operate the spaceships and the airplanes and stuff like that. And they're also the transports between the systems, keep the wheels and grease of the Empire flowing. Actually, notice you don't actually have any ships here.
I don't.
You don't have any
I don't.
planes.
Something that's unique about my collection, I own these models, but I don't find myself motivated so much to paint the things on the larger standing bases. With the exception, of course, of anything that is classified as a battle suit. I love battle suits, if that's not clear. I own as many battle suits almost as I own infantry.
It's pretty cool. So now the Tau have aggressively expanded. They keep doing these spheres of expansion where they expand out into outer space and take more planets and take more planets. And now they're at something like hundreds of worlds. And they have client races. They bring in alien auxiliaries and say, hey, join the greater good. It's all for your benefit. And so they have like the Vespid and the Kroot and all sorts of stuff like that and all sorts of other things. Tau are now on a series of expeditions trying to further the greater good and basically take over the galaxy in the name of the greater good.
Take over the galaxy? That sounds awfully antagonistic.
Okay, maybe not take over the galaxy, but liberate the galaxy.
Free the galaxy.
Free the galaxy from
Yes.
the tyranny of oppression and prejudice and xenophobia.
I like it. That's a far better take. That should actually be right on their recruitment poster, I think. In the lore, we start to see this divergence within the Tau Empire.
It's true, yes.
And it's around the third sphere expansion when we start moving out further, and it's largely led now by Shadow Sun, one of the few last trained pupils of the great Puretide. Puretide is teaching Shadow Sun and is teaching Farsight.
Both subscribers to a particular philosophy. Kayun for Shadow Sun and Montka for Farsight. They have differing philosophies, and Farsight is now considered a little bit of a rebel, a traitor.
Yeah, not a little bit. He's considered a traitor.
Yeah, but Is he though?
Rebel is the better label. I think he's seen the truth in the Tau. He's seen what happens on the front line. He's heard the messages and the orders and how the double speak happens between the water caste and the fire caste and the earth caste.
He's basically separated out his own little niche. He's taken, I think they're like 5 or 6 planets, and they're the Farsight enclaves. They are a group separated, and they've kicked out all the ethereals. No ethereals
are allowed. There's actually a poster at every spaceport in the Farsight enclaves.
The current lore for Tau is that they have developed this kind of, they have this warp portal to the other side of the galaxy, and they've now been expanding in that area. They discovered a new engine, they tried to use it en masse, and it accidentally created a warp portal. The whole fleet got sucked into it, and they thought, oh, well, they're lost, we'll make a new one. And while that fleet was stuck in the warp, they started getting killed by demons, and all their auxiliaries, like their human auxiliaries and the crew, started going crazy and trying to kill them. The Tau have very little signature in the warp, so they weren't kind of influenced as much, but they kind of went crazy a little bit. And when all hope seemed lost, this mysterious entity appeared and opened a way out and showed them how to get out. Nobody knows what this is, but every indication, every account of it seems to indicate that it looks and feels like some sort of iteration of a physical manifestation in the warp of the greater good. That maybe a human might envision is what they actually say, is that it seems like something the humans might personify as the greater good.
Yeah, is it this new deity essentially appearing into?
Or is it
really
Zinch
curious.
like having fun? Or is like, what is it? I'm so curious to have that lore expanded upon. But regardless, there is now possibly a new warp entity. There is now a new place where they're fighting, and there are some kind of crazy Tau that are really hyper xenophobic now, and they're largely been put to the side and said, okay, you fight over here, we'll take all your auxiliary away, and you just go do your thing. Yeah. So now there are trillions of Tau, billions of Kroot, all fighting for the greater good. Okay, headcanon, because I always like to ask other Tau players this. Where the ethereals came from, and there's been some other just very convenient advances the Tau have made. For instance, when they couldn't figure out how to do any kind of fast and light travel, they suddenly discovered wreckage on their moons, space wreckage from some sort of other alien race we don't know of, and they were able to reverse engineer that. There's a lot of very convenient things like the ethereals and stuff like that have advanced the Tau. So the theory is out there that they are actually a manipulated or engineered race from somebody else to fight something or do something, and maybe it got out of hand or something like that.
Perhaps they are the opposite side of the spectrum, set out to do a similar task, almost like a mass correction on the galaxy as what the Tyranids are expected to do. The Tyranids are about consuming and destroying everything in their path.
Yeah.
The Tau are more about resetting in terms of getting everyone on the level playing field of the greater good. So maybe it's going about the same task, just going about it in a very, very different way.
I kind of suspect it's an Eldar plot. Let's talk this army as a whole. Not the lore, but where it came from. And it was one of the first new races that had ever come out for 40K.
We'd get a report of a new release at the time. Basically, the only place you were getting these was in White Dwarf magazine.
That's true, yeah.
And I happened to have a White Dwarf subscription. With my group of a few friends at the time, the White Dwarf came and it had that majestic crisis suit image on the front cover, and it too was giving me goosebumps. And I remember looking at it and being like, what is that? Where does that come from? How do I get my hands on this? And inside those pages, it started to unveil the Tau Empire and the fact that this line was going to be coming for orders soon. They had, at the time, a Hammerhead Devilfish kit. You had to get the boxes separately. They didn't come with the same stuff. You had just your Fire Warriors and your Strike Team, which came with a couple drones at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And you had your Crisis suits as a base chassis. That Crisis suit could either be a Crisis suit, or you could modify it into a commander with a few bits to lead your army within a Crisis suit, or you could modify it into the dreaded and first iteration of the broadside battlesuit.
Right, yeah, this was basically a metal add-on that you put shoulder-mounted railguns to, and the railguns were the same stats as a Hammerhead, and it was like this small little body with a gun that was, at that time, the strongest gun in the game.
The shadow that follows Tau to this day is that first iteration of it feel-bads on the table of players that have just finished painting that Dreadnought and have paid a fifth of their army. you'd shoot it off the table. One shooting phase.
Yeah.
And nothing would do that prior.
Tau were really the first iteration of a shooting-focused army. Lots of other armies had good shooting versus close combat, but every other army had like a smattering of close combat units and mixture. This was the first army that had none of that. It was just shooting. And so they had all sorts of things to deal with that. Long range, powerful guns. Crisis suits could move, shoot, and then move again in the charge phase to hide behind a building. It was glorious. Jump, shoot, jump.
The
I loved
infamous
it.
jump, shoot, jump. Yeah, JSJ, as it's been called. And that actually lasted for quite some time. We've seen little bits of that reemerge. And
we can finally do that a little bit with certain relics and stuff like that.
So oppressive.
It was so bad.
And 4th edition had terrain that was size appropriate. It wasn't as you could see it. Terrain, you would declare size. Crisis suits were actually size 1, meaning that any terrain of size 2 or higher, you were perfectly hidden behind, which was almost always hills.
Yeah.
So you just put your crisis suit behind a hill, jump them up, shoot everything, jump them down, be completely indestructible.
To be honest, that is probably where the Tau get some of their unlove. People, the hate is that memory of that time and other times, because one of the challenges with a shooting army is how you balance it from a gameplay perspective. If you don't make the shooting strong enough, then the player playing it can't win. They eventually get into combat and then they just die. If you make it too strong, then the opponent just gets shot off the table before they can get to you, and then it's no fun for the opponent. So it's game mechanics really, really tough to balance, and they've gone through so many iterations of it. And when the Tau have been strong, they have been oppressively strong. Yeah. And when they've been weak, they have been hard.
And I think we suffered for that a little bit. Codex is following that one. There was a little bit of a drought where, although we did get some new models, we got our piranhas and we got some new stealth suits, and then those stealth suits got replaced. And we started to also see all of the other armies catch up.
Yes.
And we saw the terrain change, and now jump, shoot, jump wasn't as effective, because even if you were jumping up onto a ruin, you could be seen when you jump behind it again. There was a bit of a balancing, a little bit of a humble period of time for Tau between, I'd say, 5th and 7th, where you had to be pretty die-hard to still be fielding a Tau army.
And that's where I started. I started where everyone that played said, don't start Tau, they suck, they will always lose, they're no fun, they don't fit in the lore. And I said, watch me. One of the things that always drew me to this is it felt functional. It didn't feel over the top. It felt like I could see that existing in real life if the technology was there. But there's a lot of 40K stuff, Space Marines especially, that just feels like, this is ridiculous. Why would this exist? Like, even if you had all the tech in the world, why do you put the guns there?
If you did, why would you do this?
Yeah, it just it makes zero sense. Like, it's just for the rule of cool. And I get it. Cool is cool.
Cool is cool.
But Tau, in their lore, in their tech, in their model line, feel realistic to an extent, as far as an anime suit army can go.
They feel right.
They feel
to me.
right.
And not to everyone. It's to each their own. They are an acquired taste, for sure.
Yeah. This is one of the prettier Tau armies I've ever seen on the table. And I'm, as I said, a little jealous. It looks pretty. I wish mine looked as good. We're actually going to be playing a game later. Cayune versus Monka. Farsight versus Tau Sept. We'll have some fun fighting that out.
We get to finally settle which is the best way. What is the greatest battle?
What is the greatest good? And is Farsight a traitor, or is he merely the future of the Tau? True or false for you? I feel like the Tau have the best iteration of the rules they've ever had.
I have to say true. I think it's brilliant what the designers have done with the current iteration of the rules. I think there's some tweaking that's happened. It's very minor, but they play exactly how I envisioned Tau to play.
And I'm not talking about like how powerful they are compared to other armies. I'm talking about how they actually play. Everything feels viable, like there's a place and a point to it. The weapons make sense how they work now. Drones make sense. You don't have to you're not forced to take 1 billion drones to make the army viable. You can take them, you can also not take them, and the army still works. Thank you for joining us for a Nerd Fest on Tau. The Tau are beautiful, awesome, the best race out there in my opinion. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah, there we go. I've got one person agreeing with me, and there's no one else here, so I guess we win. We'd like to know, what other armies should we cover? We've got a number of armies in the studio, and we'd like to do a deep dive on all of them. Tell us in the comments what you'd like to see and what we should cover in the future, and hopefully we can bring out some other cool armies to show you for that. Thank you so much for coming in the studio.
My pleasure.
And until we see you next time, in the grim darkness of the far-flung future. Play on.